Mortality awareness, it's not morbid, it's motivating because it creates urgency and urgency sparks action. So what happens is if your fear is, oh, I don't want to do that. What if I fail? What will people think? Will they judge me? Or like something like that. That's held over here. And then your fear of dying without doing it, that becomes greater. That's not the kind of life that I want to live.
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Value Whispering podcast. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, business coach and value whisperer. And on this show, we discuss the smarter way to market your small business that just happens to be brilliant for introverts. And if you want to grow a profitable business without loud or gimmicky tactics or feeling like you have to change who you are, you're in the right place. And you're about to enjoy the right conversation, because one thing I've seen so many people wrestle with, myself included, is how do you stand out without being louder, particularly when you're facing a fiercely competitive marketplace where there are some people who are being incredibly loud. Whether it's through social media, networking, or simply talking about what you do, it can be easy to feel like success belongs to those people with the biggest personalities, the most polished content, or who are just simply the loudest or feel the loudest out there. But every time I work with a client, I'm reminded that the people they're most drawn to aren't necessarily the loudest, but the people they resonate with the deepest. Those people who feel really genuine. And that's why I couldn't wait to invite today's guest onto the show. Karen Salmansohn is a multi-bestselling author, behavioural change expert, and someone who has spent years helping people become what she calls their You-ier You. In other words, the version of you that isn't trying to fit into anyone else's mold, but is confidently expressing who they really are. Together in this conversation, we explore why authenticity has become even more important in the age of AI, and how confidence is something that we build rather than wait for, and why our stories often have far more impact than we may realize. If you've ever found yourself wondering whether you're saying the right thing, showing up enough, or somehow that you need to be a different version of yourself to grow your dream business, I think you're going to take a lot away from this conversation. Actually, I know you are. So let's dive in. Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, this show is all about smarter marketing for introverts. And the bit that makes it smarter is that we're not wasting energy trying to be anyone else, trying to follow other people's strategies. It's all being ourselves authentically. And then I came across your content, which instantly hooked me in because it's just written so beautifully, but so on point, and it's so you all the time. And then as I started following you, I discovered like one of your big things is helping bringing out the You-ier You. And I was like, okay, I have to get Karen on my show. so, so thank you so much for saying yes. And all of your content is definitely you, but it really started back with the book with the best title in the world ever. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey into that process of leaning into your authentic self?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been writing. Well, as a kid, I wanted to be a real author, and then I wound up in advertising. So I started off in advertising, and in some ways, I think that has helped me a lot. But now I feel like I have to unlearn everything I did in advertising because, like, my marketing brain and my puns, in particular, my puns, are not what's going to be the voice of what people want today. They don't want a marketing sounding writing. They don't want like punny. They want like the heart, who you are, what I call being you-ier. Um, but I did write very you-ier titles back in the day before there was AI or anything like that. I was a writer. And I wrote a business book because I rose up quickly. I was a senior VP creative director in advertising, and I quit to write books. And then I sold my books to big publishing houses. and then to the movies. They were optioned to be movies. Didn't get made into a movie, but they were optioned. And so I started to give talks to women on how to pursue and snag your passion. And as a joke, I said to my agent, I gotta go. I have to go give my How to Succeed in Business Without a Penis seminar. And I just said it as a joke, and it could have just stayed in the ether and disappeared. But she's like, "Oh, Karen, you should write a book on that because you've managed to do that, you know?" So I thought she was kidding. She talked me into it, and a publishing house bought it. And then I wrote the book. And in the book, I say a woman doesn't need a penis to succeed, just balls. And it was extremely ballsy of me to write this book because it was back in the 1990s and nobody was putting naughty words in book titles back then. So I was always just kind of using my voice. Like literally, it was something I just said. And then after that, I wrote another book with a ballsy title, How to Be Happy, Damn It. And that again in the 1990s. In fact, there's a whole nother story, but I won't even go in there. But I do believe that you have to be your You-iest self. That's how you're going to stand out. And it's even more important now in this world of AI with like the whole blendification of writers, of brands, all of that for us to show up with whatever is our You-iest parts and make those even louder and even try to figure that out even more so now so you don't wind up blending in with the blandification that's out there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I heard of someone that they were purposely putting in mistakes into their content so people wouldn't think it was written by AI. So
Uh,
it's harder to do, and AI is getting cleverer. But I think if we, as you say, if you're your You-iest you, it doesn't just help you stand out, but it attracts the right people to you. Because if you're not being you, you're attracting someone else's audience. So it
yeah.
brings the right people and opportunity to you. It feels easier and more authentic. And it all just works beautifully. But it's quite hard to decide who is your You-iest you.
Yes.
And particularly, I think as women, we have been taught to blend it in a little bit more. How have you gone against that? Was it really that book title showed you, okay, actually, I can stand out and it's fine? Or was there a bit more process? Was it an easy thing for you?
Well, I have like five answers all at once. One of them is, weirdly enough, because I'm also a behavioral change expert, is to identify with core values like brave, innovative, curious, feisty, bold, and remind yourself of that because I am going to go back and tell you the story of how to be happy, damn it. At the time, my agent, who did How to Succeed in Business Without a Penis with me, who was brave enough, who even suggested it, when I recommended to her, I said, "Oh, I know the next book. I want to do self-help for people who wouldn't be caught dead doing self-help because there are no cool self-help books out there." Like I'm always embarrassed to be reading back then in the 1990s. I'd rip off the covers from the books, like something from like a sitcom, put a fake book cover on. I didn't want to be seen reading it. And I came up with How to Be Happy, Damn It. And she's like, "Karen, you can't do that in self-help." And then I wanted to make it with graphics and everything. And she said no to me. And I let her go. I believed in it so much. I could just see it that I let her go and I decided to find another agent. And then because I was an art director, creative director, advertising, I art directed the whole book from beginning to end. And then that was a step that was a little ballsy also because I didn't even know there's a term for it, an accidental book packager, because I could see it in my mind. And I know that people in general are fearful and a little lazy, and sometimes editors can be fearful and lazy. They're like, "Oh no, a book with visuals in it that's a self-help book did not exist back then." So I thought, let me take the fear out. Let me help them to be lazy. This is what it looks like. And then I found another agent, and the book had a bidding war and went on to become a huge bestseller. That book alone sold like 250,000 copies and was hand selected by Eminem. I never sent it to him. He must have loved the bright orange color and the feisty title. And he put in one of his music videos, one of his big ones. And then on the other end of the spectrum, PBS picked it to be in a documentary about happiness. So, like from PBS to Eminem. And then years later, I wanted to write a book about the power of mortality awareness after my dad died. And my agent kept saying, "No, no, no, you're the happiness author. Don't do a book about death. It's a career killer, this book of death." So I kept listening to her years later. And then one day I thought, wait a minute, why am I listening to her? I remember back in the 1990s when my agent said no to How to Be Happy, damn it. I went ahead and decided to do that book anyway. And then I thought, I watched my brain go through this process. Oh, well, I guess I was bolder and feistier and more innovative when I was young. I heard that thought in my brain. And core values, bolder, feistier, innovative. And then I thought, wait a minute, I'm still bold, I'm still feisty, I'm still innovative. And when I reminded myself of those core values, I wrote a nice note to my agent. I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do this book anyway. I believe in it enough. So when you remind yourself that that's what you want your life to stand for, that is like part of your identity, part of what makes you you-ier, and
Mm.
that you'll like don't die on the hill for it. That is me. That is who I want to be. That is how I want to live my life. And reminding myself of those core values helped me to move forward with the other book. And now I think about those core values all the time on purpose.
I love that. I think it's amazing advice. And there's that book, The Top 10 Regrets of the Dying. And is it number one or two is not being themselves enough, bending to
Yes.
someone else's will rather than doing what they felt was right, what they wanted to do. So I love that you're going to
Well,
you'll be there in the hospice with no regrets.
that's actually part of why I knew I needed to write the book, because the book that I wanted to write was including the top regrets of the dying, where I reverse engineered them. And I did this before I wrote the book. It's why I wanted to write the book. I reverse engineered the top regrets of the dying. And I thought, what do I need to do now to avoid the top regrets of the dying? And I realized that there were 7 core values that would combat the regrets. And it's because few of the regrets of the dying were, I wish I had lived truer to myself. I wish I had expressed myself more openly, all of these. And so that's why in my 7 core values, one of them is authenticity. And another one is brave.
Mm.
Authenticity, brave, curious, discerning, empathically loving, fun, because another top regret of the dying is I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And then the last one, grateful. So I think about those 7 core values a lot.
Yeah. Is that your book, Your To Die For Life?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. I love your posts on that. And it sounds like quite a somber topic, but as you say, it's actually when you read your post, you're like, yeah, yeah, I should do that. It's really very encouraging and reassuring, and it's a great way to think of things and a great inspiration to be you-ier right now. And I think we can all do this. We're not at the end of our lives, but we can all see a time in our past where we held back from doing something, where now we're thinking, well, why didn't I just do that? I could have done that with that perspective. And I think we can already bring that into today to help us be braver and bolder and do more.
You know, mortality awareness, it's not morbid, it's motivating because it creates urgency, and urgency sparks action. So what happens is if your fear is, oh, I don't want to do that. What if I fail? What will people think? Will they judge me? Or like something like that. That's held over here. And then your fear of dying without doing it, that becomes greater. That's not the kind of life that I want to live. This is who I want to be. So when you embrace mortality awareness, you do get bolder because you realize we're here and then we're not, and it's up to us to make the here part as meaningful as possible.
Yeah. So how does this link into, or does it, your why the hell not theory on success?
Well, I mean, definitely when you're thinking about, you know, how you want to have lived your life, the end of your life, what you want people to say at your eulogy, it helps to really want to make it a very entertaining, inspiring eulogy. You want to live that way. In fact, I even ask people in my book to write their own eulogy, and I have a fill in the blank, like a Mad Libs eulogy template. So when you're at that crossroads where fear is in your face and you're like, oh my gosh, should I do that? You know, it's really helpful to think to yourself, why the hell not? Why the hell not? This is the kind of life I want to live. So I've had many why the hell not moments. And one of them was after I wrote How to Succeed in Business. Well, there are a couple, even writing that book. When you write a book about being feisty, you become feistier. It's something that happens when you write a book. It really like, I guess it's identity a little bit. Well, I wrote a book about that. This is who I am. And so after How to Succeed in Business by the Penis, I was asked to write a sequel book called Ballsy. And I was going to get testimonials for that book. And I was just going to go out at first to some of the people that I knew that were successful. And then I looked at my book cover, which said ballsy right in my face. I thought, you know what? I'm going to be ballsy about who I asked for testimonials. And I thought, who do I want? And I thought, Seth Godin. And I was like, could I ask Seth Godin? And then I thought, why the hell not? And I actually think a lot of the turning points in my career were why the hell not moments. So I wrote him a little email. He wrote back and then he gave me a blurb, a testimonial. I sent him the book. And then I had the why the hell not, and I asked him for coffee. And so, I took it up a notch to like more of a colleague friendship level. And I've had a lot of moments like that. Why the hell not? Like when I wanted to sell my novel to the movies, I at first had let my agent try to sell it to the movies, but he was a literary agent and not a film agent, but he wanted a shot at it. So out of like, loyalty and gratitude that he had sold my book to a publishing house, I said, go for it. And then a year later, he said, Karen, I think it's time to get like an actual film agent. So we did. We sent the book out. Somebody at CAA said, yes, I'll represent you, but your book is a year old, which means it's stale in the film business. So I think you're a strong writer. Write something new. And then I was pushing him. I was like, hey, why don't you send my novel to this female film producer? Why don't you sell my novel to this actress to be? And he kept saying, write something new, write something new, write something new. But I put my heart and soul into the novel. So one day I saw that the actress Marissa Tomei was performing at a theater here in New York called Naked Angels. And I wrote to him again and I said, hey, what about Marissa Tomei? We can send it, write something new. So on my own, with my why the hell not theory, I took my novel, I wrote a little note, put it in a manila envelope, and I went to the theater. And you know where you buy tickets? I said to the ticket lady, I said, here, could you give this to Marissa Tomei? Like I figured she had some like roundabout way. And she said, sure. And so about a month or so later, it was in the morning. I remember I was eating a bagel. And oh, I told all my friends about this, and they thought I was like, nuts, like nothing's going to happen. So I was eating a bagel one morning, and the phone rings. And it's somebody on the phone, and she says, hi, this is Marissa Tomei. I just read your novel, and I loved it. And I'm thinking, oh, this is one of my friends like mocking me for my optimism, playing a practical joke on me. And I thought, do I bother to stop chewing my bagel in this obnoxious friend's ear just in case it's Marissa? So I stopped chewing, and it turned out it was Marissa Tomei. And she took my novel and she brought it over to Miramax, and Miramax optioned it to be a movie. Didn't get made into a movie, but then they gave me a TV development deal and all of that. But it was my why the hell not? Why the hell not drop off the novel for Marissa Tomei at the theater? So
Yeah,
a lot of those moments.
I love that. And I'm curious how people respond to you when you have these why the hell not moments and you decide, I'm just going to be feistier, a bit more ballsy, because I think very often we're worried about that we're going to be judged. What will others think of me? Will I be seen as too much? But in that moment, it doesn't seem like that's the response at all. It's like, oh, great, thanks for thinking of me, or thanks for taking the initiative. Have you had any moments where it hasn't gone according to plan?
Well, I tend to use humor. So even when I drop it off at the theater, even to get that woman to bring it to Marissa, I show up warm. Like there's a way to be ballsy and still be warm. So I'm not like a ball buster, you know? So I think that's important. And even when I was calling my agent, the film agent, like, hey, what about, I'm not like yelling at him or anything. Like I'm not like that version. I'm not like bitchy ballsy, I'm warm, but the action itself is ballsy. And I do think maybe women might tend to be people pleasers or uh, maybe nervous to do something that is a little ballsy. But that's where even mortality awareness comes in, or to remind yourself that that's something you should be proud of. And in today's world, I think it's even more important, again, to do something outside of the box, to stand out in the marketplace. And because even when we sent out my novel, my agent and I, my very first published book, we did something that I guess could be ballsy, but it wasn't ballsy. It was about standing out. We sent out the manuscript. It was in the summer, and we sent it out with a towel and a bottle of suntan lotion and a note that said, "This will make great beach reading this weekend." We sent it out on a Friday. And that's a little ballsy, but it's warm ballsy. It's about standing out. And even my note for Marissa was like more warm. Like you don't have to be bitchy and ballsy.
Yeah. And then coming back to the no regrets, you feel, well, at least I tried. Having done something bold just inspires you whether it works out or not. I find when I do bold things, I'm like, oh, I actually did that. And then sometimes I forget that I've done it. Like reaching out to you felt very bold. And then I forgot that I did it. And then you came back. It's like, I'd love to. I was like, yes.
Well, and I do hope that my stories inspire somebody to ask why the hell not.
Yeah.
You know, I really do hope that, like, oh man, if she can do it, and quite frankly, I am a little bit of an introvert. I know I don't sound it because I'm cursing like a sailor here, but I'm very good at like one-on-one and I prefer that. Uh, but my personality, like you invited me to a party, I might be like a little bit more shy. Like that's not my area. And so I guess if you remind yourself not only of your core values, I'll tell you something else. If you really believe in what you wrote, that helps. So at the time, I reminded myself, oh, no, this book is really, it's strong. I know, like remind yourself of that. And it does help. Like when I was writing my book, my other book, the Bounce Back book, and it was about resiliency psychology and everything that I had gone through and made it through the other side. And I wanted to sell it and I wanted to write it. I kept thinking, you know what? People need to read this. I think this book will really help people. And when you feel that way, even with the book, You're to Die for Life, no, this book is really going to help people. Then you feel, well, first of all, it reminds you you have meaning and purpose in your life. And that really is a great motivator. But second of all, it reminds you like there are people out there that this can help. And that kind of makes you feel a little ballsier.
Yeah. Yeah. So quite often I'm speaking on stages about value whispering, which is meaning that you can have an impact in the world, you can succeed without being the loudest voice. And that feels very bold because I'm not the loudest, boldest person. So standing on stage already, you think, oh, I have to be more performative. I have to have these big gestures. It's like, well, that's just not me. But every time I do that, there's so many people come to me afterwards like one event, I spoke at 5 o'clock. I was still at the event at midnight answering people's questions
Wow.
because they'd never had anyone speak on stage that represented them before.
Yes,
And I thought, yes, that just made me feel more bold to do it again the next time because, okay, maybe I don't look like every other speaker, but that's exactly why I should be out there.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the you-ier you are, the more our world needs you, because that means you have something you-ier to say that might not have been said in your you-ier form. Like instead of like copycat, cut and paste, generic, like, the more you figure that out, who you are and what you want to stand for, the more likely you're going to stand out.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, women especially, and experts, I work a lot with incredibly smart women, real experts in their field, and they kind of wish or hope that their expertise will do the work for them, that that is enough. And sometimes they hold back on being visible because they're waiting to be more confident. And they feel like, well, I'll do this a little bit more, then I'll be more confident, then I'll be more ready. And it doesn't work that way. Do you have any advice on how to start being you yourself and build that confidence to help you be more visible?
Yeah. Well, listen, I forgot the exact amount of hours, but there was some quote somewhere that I read, and I'm going to make up the numbers because I don't remember them. That it's going to take 75 hours for you to become an expert at something or for you to become really good at something. So if you allow yourself that you're going to trip and fall at first and it's going to be okay because it's part of the experience of growing and learning. And that's part of why I believe we're here to learn lessons to help us to grow into our best possible selves and that everything helps you to get there to become your best possible self. If you allow that, then you could just show up maybe not exactly right, but it's going somewhere. Uh, Substack even, I put it off. I have a very talented writer friend, Jen Loud, and I'm giving her a shout out. I love her. She was on Substack for a long time, and I was reading her essays, and I kept thinking, oh, I should go over to Substack. The learning curve of it, I was like, oh God, another technology to figure, oh my. And when I first went on, I'm like, this is a little complicated. How do you? And then I slowly taught myself, and I thought of myself as a Substack scientist. That helped. These are experiments. Oh, that was a failed experiment. Okay, what did I learn from that experiment? And it's sort of wild. The other day, I reshared an old Substack. I've been on Substack for about a year and a half now, an old Substack from the early days. And it didn't have as many shares as my new ones. And I looked at it and I saw with my new Substack scientist eyes, like 5 things I'd done wrong in it. And I was like, oh, I didn't ask for comments below. I don't even have a comment button. What the heck? You know, because I was a beginner. But if I didn't allow myself to fall and stumble, learn, grow, it, it takes a while and you have to give yourself those hours and be kind to yourself during those hours.
Yeah. And when I moved over to Substack, as you say, it was like, what is this? I was always getting lost, not sure which settings to click on. But, I put content out there, but I just kept reminding myself, no one else knows I'm here. I'm just putting content out, and it doesn't matter if it's not perfect because maybe a handful of people will see it at most. So it's fine. And I've given myself permission to experiment and play. And
That word play is important.
hmm,
If you tell yourself, I think at a certain point I said, oh, this will be fun to figure out. Like I changed like, oh shit, learning curve to, oh, this will be fun to figure this out. I don't know how I made it feel like play. So I'm glad you said the word play.
yeah, but I'm using it as an opportunity because it's long form posts to re-find myself and my voice, which I feel it got lost a little bit on LinkedIn. It felt like it was starting to slip more into marketing speak than
Yes.
me. And so I'm loving that process and that opportunity.
I love that. And that's actually, it goes back to how to market yourself as a female entrepreneur too. I was using ConvertKit and writing kind of marketing emails, right? And good. I come from advertising, but at a certain point, I'm like, I don't know, I'm a writer first. This is why I quit my job in advertising to be a writer. And that was what the pull, the siren call to Substack was from Jen, because she's just writing essays. And then there was also part of me that thought, because we have to be ready to evolve. The world is constantly changing. Don't forget to change with it. We are constantly changing. And I thought, I don't really want to be like, I started off as a novelist. I don't think I want to write like personal development. So I got myself excited that Substack will be where I experiment with this new voice of like still psychological, but more memoiry and more like stories. And so I got myself excited about that too. So the more you can like fill up the reasons to be excited versus the reasons to be afraid, column, the more it helps you to go over. And I actually got rid of my whole convert kit sequence. And I feel like the way in for people is really just to have them get to know you as your You-iest self. And then that trust is there. And then that's the way you can, it's not even selling at a certain point. It's more like, oh, I want more of this from her. Like, so I don't even use traditional, I mean, it's a little bit weird, but I don't even use traditional convert kit sequences anymore.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to do it. And I see if people like have a sales conversation with me, if they've come direct from the website, it's a very different conversation to someone who has listened to my podcast and then they read some of my articles, then they did this over here and they downloaded this mini course and then they've had a whole experience and then they come and then the conversation we have is wonderful. I love it. It's a very different way of doing it. And so, yeah, I can really relate to that temptation and good on you for actually doing it, getting rid of the sequence. They know this is get to know me and then we'll have a conversation. I think that's a really great way to go. And building that trust today is even more important than ever. And I think that's why being your You-iest You is so important. I used to teach writing for the web like 15 years ago. And back then I was saying the thing with the internet is anyone from anywhere can post anything about anything. So you have to really focus on building trust.
Yeah.
And now it's like off the charts. You don't even know if it's actually a person behind any of this. So I think being that distinctive person consistently, and I think this is where we were talking before we came live about that process of getting to know you and building the trust comes from being consistent. But I think consistency is more about that consistency of message rather than the consistency of showing up. Because I'm not always that consistent, but because all my content builds on itself and it's coming from my heart, it compounds over time, regardless of if I haven't posted on LinkedIn for 2 weeks. And I thought it was really interesting your approach because you don't just think, oh, I'm going to write this article for people and get it out there. You have several going on at the same time. Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Yeah. Well, I've been thinking lately because actually Substack is now my favorite of all the different, you know, more than Instagram, more than, it's because it does have more depth and it is more fun for me because I'm stretching myself as I'm writing. But I don't churn them out. Like at first I thought once a week, and then sometimes I'd be writing an essay and it wasn't done that week, but I didn't want to just put it up just to put it up. I wanted to write something I was like really, I call it cracking the code, that I cracked the code on, like when it's done. And so I started to write a couple of essays at the same time, like little racehorses, almost like, oh, here's an idea for an essay, here's an idea. And I'd sort of like dip into them and see which one got done first, like as it was like, and also it helped to go away from it, think about a different topic, go away. And there was one essay in particular that I was really struggling with. It was my one where I pretended I was having coffee with my 90-year-old self, and she had come to visit me to give me life advice as 90-year-old me. And when I came up with it, I'm like, oh, that's a fun one. Oh, it should be fun to write. Well, it wasn't that fun to write in the very beginning of writing it because I thought 90-year-old me has to be smarter than me. It can't just be like 65-year-old me giving six. So I was like, what should I know? What do I need to know that I don't know? You know? And it took me like 3 weeks and I almost gave up on it and I kept pushing. And then I cracked the code on it. There's one thing that she said to me. I was like, oh, where did that come from? Just sometimes it happens. Like, where did that come from as you're writing? And I'm like, now it can go out. And I don't think I had written for 2 weeks on Substack, and it went out and it went like viral. That piece is one of my most shared, loved pieces on there. And I thought from that experience, you know what? I don't have to get something out every week. I'd rather get one thing out that I am excited about, that excites other people. And I think people could almost feel the effort because the response was almost like equal to the effort. Like it was like, oh, I put a lot of effort and it was rewarded. How do you like that? And then I thought from there, a lot of people, and I don't want to sound anyway, like they're using AI and so it's faster. I can't compete with that. I write partially because I love hate writing. Like that moment where I'm like, oh my God, I'm stuck. I kind of love it. It's like I'm trying to figure it out and everything. And I can't just get it up for getting it up's sake. I want to write it. I want to figure it out. I love having written. So I've given myself permission not to go for the once a week thing and just write it in a way where when I post it, I'm like, yes. And it's you-ier that way too. It's like really been with me and cooked with me. So that's something I recommend to people that it isn't necessarily quantity. If you do one thing that's like really strong versus like, let's say even say 10 things that are just like what I call the blandification of things now, you're not going to be you or you're not going to grow your business. So I'd recommend people focus on doing something that, the heart, soul, caffeine, sweat equity has been put into and posting less, even though that's not the recommended. Oh, to be fair on Substack, I was still stirring the pot with notes, but I wasn't posting my essays once a week anymore.
Yeah, I really love that because when I have these sales conversations, I would say 90% of the people tell me that they started their business to create something they feel proud of. And then they think of that with their business, but then they very quickly throw that aside when it comes to their marketing because they feel that pressure just to, oh, I just need to be out there. I need to be visible. I just need to say the right things. And they forget that your marketing is an extension of who you are, how you help, and your business. So if you want to feel proud in your business, feel proud of your marketing as well. Really
Yes.
create something special that's going to start a relationship between you and your ideal client to start that conversation. And it's not pressured in that way. And I think if you take your time to do that, and I just love that example that then, you took that extra time and, oh, this is my time to post, but it's not ready. And
Oh,
you allowed yourself that
yeah, I'm
time.
going to tell you another quickie because it might be interesting to you and people listening. I do like to write stories because I feel like now I have to think like how can I be the anti-AI? Like it's like you were telling me before or did you tell me today or like now while we were recording that people put in mistakes on purpose or
Yeah.
something? But I like stories because that's like anti-AI or something that's like a weird tool that's not like the traditional tool or whatever. And sometimes I hunt on my own website for old essays I wrote like 10 years ago that I want to rewrite not as a personal development author, but as my more memoiry literary, like telling it like a story, not like here's three things to like. But so I had this essay. And I rewrote it for Substack. And then I thought, well, I'm going to and I kind of did it on purpose to be sarcastic because I knew it was kind of a nutty essay. It starts off with a story about my son and Legos and being a master builder. Then I go to yoga class where I'm learning to be a yoga teacher, and the teacher tells me about karma and dharma. I relate it back to Legos and being a master builder of your life. Then I bring in a story Frida Kahlo, and then a story of Sylvester Stallone. And then I end up with about being a master builder of your life. And I knew it was a kind of crazy structure. So I showed it to AI and I said, what do you think of this? And I was ready for it. I knew it. Well, this is too weird. It's like you can't start at Legos and then go to Karma Dharma and then go to Frida Kahlo and stuff. That's no. And I'm like, no, I kind of like it. No, well, remove the Sylvester Stallone story. It suggested to me. I'm like, I feel like, well, shorten it. It goes on to, no, no, no. And I said no to it. So that's the other thing. Being so you-ier in yourself. Like I always was ready for it. I kind of was like amused by like, I know AI is going to hate this and that's good. And so I put it up. Sure enough, underneath it, people are writing, I love that Sylvester Stallone story. That really, like, or, oh, I love how it went from Legos to Karma. Like, people are craving that. So if AI hates it, that's a friggin' good sign, is what I have to say.
I love that one as well. You were reading it and you're like, where's she gonna go next? It's um what's his name? Robert Cialdini. And he was saying that how he noticed that if he's giving a lecture and he starts with a bit of a mystery, then people stay interested because they're like, well, what's the mystery? Where's it going to go next? And I think you did that with that article because he's like, oh, I wouldn't have got here, but it makes perfect sense. And then like, oh, now we're over here. Oh, that makes sense as well. And it was really fun. I really liked it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And that was another one that took me a while. Uh, because I came up with the idea of adding the Sylvester Stallone story because I thought, oh, that's a fun story. And then I went down the rabbit hole and I learned more about Sylvester Stallone that I didn't even know researching it. I'm like, well, if I think that's interesting, I'm throwing that in too, you know? And so I guess putting in effort is also part of it. Like going that 150% when you do it. It's not just, I could have just posted the other one, but I was like, no, no, I want to make this more mine now.
Yeah, and I think what you just said there, you went with what you felt was interesting. And so
Yes.
surely someone else will find it interesting, whereas AI doesn't know what's interesting because it's not human.
Right, right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So we've covered so much, but as women start to listen to this episode, or some men, and start to look for ways to be you-ier in their content, in their marketing, are there any helpful frameworks that you've used or shared in the past that might help them get started with this?
Yes, I would say stories. I would say drink a lot of coffee and think of all of your stories, the stories that are your stories, your origin story, anything where you learned something, grew, changed, fell, got up. And I know I'm more in the psychological behavioral change space. So those are the ones that are for me. But even no matter what, even if you're teaching business or writing or something business oriented, stories of that show who you are and how you learned this maybe in a crooked way. Those are the stories people are going to connect with, where you're human stories. Don't even think about what the main essay is. Maybe just even think about your favorite stories from your own life and then analyze it. And by the way, I'm making this up as I go along. I didn't know I was going to say this. Uh, but I think I've done this, but not knowing I was doing it. Like, oh, I remember that story. What was that about? Oh, you know what? That's a lesson in blah, 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 blah. So, and then think about what is it, a lesson in blah, 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 blah. And that's like content, you know? And then think about your core values and keep repeating them. There's something called identity-based statements, which I write about in Your To Die for Life, that if you link a core value to a habit, you're more likely to do it. So if you're afraid of something, but you do value brave, I am brave and so I. And people that link the core value are more likely to do it. There's a whole system of thought about this that, in fact, they did a study with voters. They were trying to get people to show up at the polls more. And so they took two different groups of people. One group, they gave them the advertising method of like cute little punny taglines, like, to get them to vote. And the other group, they had them identify as voters, like I am a voter and so I, and the joy of being a voter. They changed their identity. And the people that they changed their identity of, like, I am a voter, wound up showing up at the polls like three times as much. And our identity is the puppet master of our habits. Like we're doing it now. If you think, I am sloppy, you will be sloppy. I am organized, you will be organized. I am brave, you're going to be brave. So write down, I am brave, and so I. I am innovative, and so I. Whatever is a core value that resonates with you, and put that in your Google Calendar. So it doesn't just say write the essay or call that person, get yourself in that mindset and identify with it.
I love that. And actually, I think it's in Persuasion, Robert Cialdini again, he gave a similar study where, the people who stand out in front of train stations and like, will you sign this petition for whatever? And they stopped people and just got them to identify, like, would you call yourself a helpful person? Yeah, oh,
Ah.
yeah, I'm helpful. And then like, great, would you have a moment and I can show you this? And the number of people filling out the forms went up by 80%.
Oh my gosh, I love that study. Now
Mm.
I'm going to go down the rabbit hole. I want to read more about that. I want to read this book. That sounds so, it matches. It's completely that. Identity-based statements help.
Yeah, fantastic. Amazing help. So, Karen, I could talk to you all day, but I'm going to let you get on with your day. I know your 16-year-old might just be getting out of bed soon.
Yes.
Is there anything you feel that we haven't touched on before we wrap up that listeners really need to know to feel confident getting out there and being you-ier?
I guess I would lean on the whole mortality thing. You're mortal, quit dawdling, you know, and think about what you want your life to stand for, you know. Um, Write your eulogy. I do have a fill in the blank eulogy template that you could use, or just have fun writing your eulogy. It sounds like an oxymoronic thing. And then look at current you versus aspirational eulogy you. And then this is from the book, but I'll share it because it really helps, even without the book. But buy the book if you want, but don't buy the book if you don't want. Use this right at the top of the page. Who do I need to become to get everything I want in my life? And let the answer be your core values. And then start living by those core values now. If you need to be, who do I need to become? You need to be braver. I am brave and so I. You need to be, if it's in your relationships, I need to be more patient. I need to be more loving. I need to be a better listener. I need to be a stronger communicator. Write it down and then be those things every day. And I call it writing not just your to-do list, but your to-die list, the what matters most list. And then be those things every day and do the habits associated with those things.
Amazing advice to end on. Karen, thank you so much. If people want to know more about you, discover your books, follow you on Substack, where's the best place for them to go to?
Well, my last name is Salmansohn. Everybody mangles it. So I use not salmon, like as in not, because people think it's salmonson. So not salmon on Instagram, not salmon on Facebook, not salmon, even on Substack. If you look at the top, the domain is like not salmon Substack. But I am the stand-up philosopher on Substack, and on LinkedIn, I'm Karen Salmansohn. If you can spell it right, you'll find me.
Well, they won't need to if they go to the show notes page, which you'll find at melittacamble.com/podcast. Then I'll put all of those links in the show notes page so they can just click through. But Karen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. This was fun.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. And I really liked that question that Karen posed. Who do I need to become to create the life and business that I really want? It's such a simple question, but I think it really shifts our focus away from chasing the latest marketing trend or tactic and moves us back towards thinking about how do we become the kind of person who can build a business that feels aligned, sustainable, meaningful, and fulfilling. For me, that's what value whispering has always been about. Not trying to be louder or someone else, but becoming clearer about who you are, that value that you bring to the people you're here to help, and building that confidence in that value and using that to create even more value in the marketplace and build something we feel really proud of. I'd love to know what has resonated most with you from today's conversation. So do come and connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know what has stood out for you and what does your You-ier You look like? How do you bring value to your clients in a way that's uniquely you? And if you know someone who's been struggling to find their voice in their business, please do share this episode with them. It could be just the information they needed to hear. And finally, I wanted to end with a reminder that on the 16th of July, I'm having a special 18th business birthday party event. I'm still not sure what to call it, but I'm going to be sharing my journey over the last 18 years, the lessons that I've learned along the way, those lessons that I keep learning as my business evolves and moves to the next stage, as my life moves to the next stage, and I'll be answering your questions live. So do come and join us for that. You can find all the details and register for free at melittacampbell.com/birthday. I look forward to seeing you then. Meantime, I'll be here again next week. As I mentioned, I have got so many amazing conversations recorded recently that I just couldn't wait to share those with you. So between now and when I take the summer break with this podcast, these episodes will be out every Wednesday for you. So I look forward to seeing you again then. Bye for now.